Check, check. Okay, good. Alrighty, so we'll turn our attention to space. We'll start off from space anyway. We're looking towards bringing scalable autonomy in for space operations. So we start out with this view that we have, or a vision that we have for doing space assistance in a cislunar space. I just realized I used the word space like 5 times in 30 seconds. I apologize for that. So we have a couple of key areas we want to look into. So one is we want to have scalable autonomy so that we can command our robots at different levels of abstraction, have different kinds of multimodal user interfaces, and be able to command a team of robots on the lunar surface. Oh wait, I went backwards. On board the spacecraft using this multimodal user input device to be able to command our robots on the surface of the moon. This is very much, you can see, as with the times of looking into the Artemis mission, where Germany has become, at least as far as I know, the latest signee onto the Artemis Accord. And we also want to be able to command intravehicular robots on board the station. And this could be done from either on board the spacecraft, on the surface, or even on Earth. And that, of course, require abilities to be able to handle time delay. So we'll step back a little bit, and seeing all the great talks yesterday and today, I was actually a little nervous that some of this stuff would have already been shown. Luckily, not quite yet. So we'll start off with something from ages ago. This is Raymond Gertz. He, as far as we could tell, and very much thanks to my colleague Thomas for finding this really a piece of historical gem, where you can see Raymond started off using mechanical linkages in doing teleoperation. This is really telepresent because the forces obviously gets fed back. But then in the 50s, he went into electrical and mechanical systems. So this is really the first time we have, as far as we know, X-by-wire in telepresence operations. So that moved on for us at DLR, where we first had our space operation, teleoperation, where we did microgravity object capturing experiment on board a space shuttle. So we had a bit of a time delay, not by choice. I think this is a bit of a problem that we only recognize later. So being able to use model mediated teleoperation, we were able to do this capturing experiment. You can see here, and you can also see by the footage how old this is. So, and there we go. Capture, come on. Still makes me nervous now, even though this is before my time. All right, so then we moved on to looking at telepresence. This is a 2 degrees of freedom robot that's mounted on the outside of the ISS. This is something we worked on together with the Russian space agency, Roscosmos. Now we have forced coupling now between this joystick, which is a 2 degrees of freedom force reflection joystick. And you can see here, I just realized pointing on my screen does nothing, right? Where you can see that the robot's probe is trying to go through. So you can feel the forces coming through. And because we only have a 20 millisecond time delay between space and ground, it's a point-to-point communication, we were able to get this really crisp force reflection. And I think, in fact, Joel, you've seen some of this stuff already a few years ago. All right, so that's just to, get us set the stage towards scalable autonomy. Now, our idea here, basically, just very, very quickly, is to be able to use different kinds of input devices on a spacecraft or in any kind of control center to command a team of different kinds of robots capable of different kinds of activities. And of course, time delay. I know, John, you were talking about time delay. Where are you? There you are. Time delay being a bad thing. Until we can bend the rules of physics, we in the space area, we have to live with it. So, and especially we're talking about being able to command a cislunar space, we have a physical limitations of at least 2.5 seconds time delay. So we have to figure out how to deal with it. So we start out with looking at being able to do this at a shorter time delay. Again, this is only 20 milliseconds time delay, where we do handshakes. And you will see this handshake keeps coming up. This kind of became a bit of a DLR sanity check when we do space experiments. So this is from space to ground. Check that. Okay. As far as we know, his wife. I don't know. I'm not trying to make a joke if it always ends up that way. Uh, so there's and unfortunately the kiss is really, you don't get the tactile feedback. That's something, no joke, is something we should also look into for this kind of travel, to be able to get that kind of physical connection. Now, the purpose of this, of course, there's a lot of PR aspect to it. However, there's also very much a research aspect to this for future exploration, being able to handle this stochastic this stochastic behavior of your environment allows us, allows to be able to really explore different kinds of environmental objects, actually anything in environment. All right. And then we move on to, we started to extend farther and farther out in our ability to handle time delay and also more degrees of freedom. So earlier we had 2 degrees of freedom. Now we're using 7 degrees of freedom as an input device. And here we also have mixed modality now. So parts of it where we're having the astronaut, this is Luca Parmitano of ESA. He's commanding this robotic arm mounted on a rover to do a sample pickup. That's done with telepresence at 800 milliseconds time delay. But then the drop off, that is done at a task level. So we're already starting to look towards scalable autonomy. And that was, Holly, you talked about being, needing to switch modes. This is where we actually see that they like it. But then again, their astronauts were already trained. So it's a little different, I guess, because we kind of tell them, you have to do this. But the reverse of that is, once they're taught this, they like it. We get the feedback. So once you know that there's this function, they like it. So one of the things that we've learned before was that when we talk to our astronauts who do these kind of telepresence activities with force reflection, they like it. It's fun. But they say after 20 minutes, I'm done. And they're fighter pilots types, as John talked about, big ego, and they're still, after 20 minutes, they say, I think I'm done. So being able to kind of delegate some of these tasks is very helpful to be able to extend the mission time. All right. So we talked about needing to be able to handle more than just a couple of seconds of time delay. So our colleagues at DLR then moved towards being able to handle multi-second time delay. This is extending this passivity-based approach. And in very layman term, basically, this is like this. So you make contact with a surface unexpectedly at the robot side. Then you basically wait for that time delay. And then in the multi-seconds, you basically let the input side catch up. Then we continue. That's the most layman way I can explain this without getting too wonky. But if you're interested in knowing about this, Thomas is over there. He knows all this stuff. I'm just a mouthpiece. All right, then we'll go to the other side where we look more towards the supervised autonomy direction, where we use a robot also as a coworker. So here we have task level commands that are populated on a small UI to do different kinds of tasks that are really more along the lines of infrastructure maintenance. So a lot of known activities. Now, we had a fortunate situation where our astronaut in our first session decided to go and grab a couple of his crewmates. This doesn't happen in space operations much. They tend to stick by the schedule. But he went, I'm going to grab a couple of crewmates, which he did tell us when he came to visit us. But we just thought he's just being nice. But he really did. And he grabbed a couple of crewmates, trained them on the spot. So we also had this in situ research, how we say, where we see that this really is easy. So we have somebody who's basically is watering down your training. It's a trainee training somebody else. He trained two of the other astronauts in 15 minutes, did all the tasks we asked them to do. And learn now, okay, supervised autonomy is indeed easy to use, because unlike telepresence with direct teleoperation, it's a little harder to grasp. What are you trying to do with this, with a robot? In fact, Paulo, when he first came, he went, why do you even need me? Until you realize you're still very much in charge as the operator of the robot. Okay, so that essentially starts us off with, okay, we looked in a direct teleoperation direction, and we also looked at supervised autonomy, and somewhere in between, we have shared control, and which we will show, having shown that in our past experiments. There's, of course, also full autonomy. If I had more time, I would have shown a bit more in that direction, where we've had our robot flown over to the asteroid belt, where they took some very, very nice pictures. In case you're interested in seeing that, I could show you afterwards. This is also, I forgot who was I talking to. This is when I realized we hit the big times. Was I saw those pictures on a meme. So this is already in the pop culture. So I didn't personally do this, so I don't feel like I'm bragging for me, but this is our colleagues at Jackson and DLR who managed this. But if you're interested in finding out more about this, I'll show you later, because I now moved it all the way to the back of the slide deck. All right, so in this talk, we'll primarily focus on this area of the scalable autonomy scale. Okay, so set the scene for an astronaut. This is their workstation. This is in the Columbus module. I like to show this also because I can take solace in knowing that not only my kid's room is a mess. So I have to highlight where the parts are, otherwise you can't see them. Oh, and if any of you have seen the comparison pictures side by side of the Chinese space station and the Columbus module, this is a shame. But don't get me wrong, our astronauts have been super helpful. They're very, very friendly, but this kind of lets you see they're also human. It's kind of nice too. So we have a laptop device. The laptop is just a standard laptop, standard issue on the space station. The trick is all in the user interface, which we use a knowledge-driven approach to realize supervised autonomy and scalable autonomy. We have there we go. You see that, right? Okay. We have a open loop joystick and the Sigma device, which you see a lot already yesterday and today, and we'll talk more about this device. All right. Now, before I talk even more, I apologize for the noise.
We will have a handshake with you just to get
you, God, I hate my voice. Anyway, so as you see, we do another handshake. This is where we went from 2 degrees of freedom input device to a 7 degree of freedom input device.
Fantastic.
And
as we are coming up on our timeline,
DLR also tries to, I paused because I was wondering if I should talk about this, but DLR tries very hard to bring in different kinds of ways of different representations from different walks of life. And just by chance, we didn't go out of our way to do this. My teammate happens to be a girl, was able to shake hands with an astronaut who's also a girl, which for my mom, that was a real big deal. I was, wow, that's a girl. I went, Mom, we have more female astronauts as our subjects than male. So it's a small victory I'm very happy about. All right, so moving on back onto robotics. So we also look into using supervised autonomy. So you see this flick of the switch. This is something that a robot already is able to plan. So this is something you could just press a button and get that sorted. And that really relieves the workload on the boring stuff, so to speak. And then we look into, this is our first chance of doing scalable autonomy, where in one task, where this grasping of the lever that's done at a task level, so that everything is pre-planned. But then once we get into lifting, we use the Sigma to do the lifting, which is done in direct teleoperation, to know if the experiment here is to see how stiff is the lever. It's a simple experiment, but the point here is to show that we can switch without really needing to think too hard. Our hope is that eventually that we can use scalable autonomy in a way like you go to the, I know I told some of you this already, like you go to a coffee machine where you press a button, your coffee is made. That's more like high level task level command. And then you do little changes like you add 2 cubes of sugar, you add, however, soy milk, etc. That's more on the direct level. And you don't even think about it, you just do it. And that's what we hope that is something that we can also offer our crew in the future. All right, so moving forward, so we went from having scalable autonomy on one robot to now commanding a team of robots. So this is our more recent experiment. This is Surface Avatar, where we have a couple of experiment tasks designed. This is a case where we have sample tube return, where you see our blue robot, as I think you probably heard Thomas talk about already. That's our blue robot, Justin. I do realize we talk about Justin like everybody's supposed to know him, but that's our humanoid robot, picking up a sample tube from our ESA Interact rover. And then that is then brought over to the lander for return. And this part is done in shared control. We use a joystick to command the robot. However, you also have collision avoidance built in. So in case our crew accidentally tries to drive into a collision, it will protect itself. And that's something, again, we're very happy that you can have that transparent to the user so you don't need to think about it. The robot will protect itself and its environment. And in a space context, that's quite important. And then finally, we have the lander arm, pick it up for stowage. There's a little interesting side story here too. So when this is a sample tube, conveniently roughly this size, and we asked the crew to place the sample tube, but he understood as place the sample. So we happen to have kind of like a funnel shape, convenient, also like this, that you could just place the sample tube in, and he tried to pour it out. And that's an interesting thing with being able to communicate between your user and your ground control and the robot. And he did almost manage. The only reason we figured it out was because we started seeing that he was trying to do this. And we had to, are you trying to pour it out? So, all right. Okay, then we move on. That was sequential. So for us, relatively speaking, the easiest form of robot collaboration. So if you break it down, what that means is one robot does one thing, drops the thing down, or let's say drops the thing off, the next robot takes over. Relatively speaking, the easiest thing, because the robots don't need to know about what each other is doing. Now,
the difficulty with perspective
okay, I
grows
apologize
when
for
you
this.
have an image that is a little bit pixelated and you don't have the sharp contrast between the objects.
All right, so I don't, and right now here we moved on to having two robots working together at different levels of abstraction of the commands. So the robot that is holding this blue structure, that is in supervised autonomy mode. It's essentially following what the Interact rover, the white robot, is doing. That is being commanded by the astronaut using the Sigma device. So now we are able to handle larger objects together. So kind of like when you're moving your couch up the staircase, it's usually a leader-follower situation. So you'll have the possibility to have more complex motions being handled by multiple robots at the same time. So that was quite important for us. This is also something that we've, I don't know if it's quite, we're already fully accepted as science robotics, or we're at the last phase. All right, now we also had the robot Bert, which if you want to know more about, please talk to my colleague Daniel. He already showed this video yesterday, but I also want to talk about it in a slightly different perspective, in that you see, even as such a small robot, you'll see some of this stuff is done in direct operation, where the pickup of these little metal pieces, that's done in direct operation using a joystick. But then you'll see here, there's a drop off, and that is done with task level command. So even at a fairly low processing power a device, we can still split the workload between the crew and the target robot. All right, this is the place we actually really do want you to hear.
Over to say hi to you.
Okay.
I'll be quiet for now.
Do you recognize him?
Oh man, yeah. Well, it's swept past. No, I'm looking down, man. Hey, good to see you.
So this is the reason I didn't want to talk over him, is I want you to hear
Let's
the
see, where are you?
excitement.
He's
There, right?
good to see you.
Hey.
Waiting to see you up there.
That's awesome.
So in space missions, this is one of the things we also very much want to bring, is this will be their only contact with their loved ones back at home here. And so that's another part that we find very, very important for their mission health of the person during the mission. I should do better with my English. I apologize for that. Alrighty, then we'll moving forward. As we talked about earlier, we also want to look into being able to use all this capability into intravehicular robotics. And there's quite a bit of work done in this direction already. They're usually done in for the time being. So DLR and Airbus has the Simon robot, JAXA has IntBall, and NASA has the Astrobee. They're similar in that they're all fan driven, or at least air propulsion driven. Even though they look similar in form, with the exception of the Astrobee, which is a square box, well, a box, they actually do very different things. So Simon is primarily used as an assistant. So it has a big language model in the back, sponsored by IBM, IBM's Watson. IntBall is primarily used as a basically floating camera. And the Astrobee, even though it's intravehicular, is primarily used for, at least up to now, that I know of, is primarily used for studying trajectories. But they form a very good basis for us to look into being able to build intravehicular robots with more capabilities. And of course, NASA has had the Robonaut, which Josh Mailing and co. had been working on for many, many years. So this brings us the idea of, okay, we have all of these components. What we will try to do is then bring forward a robot that's able to traverse between different modules on a space station and have the dexterity to be able to do different kinds of tasks. The kind of tasks that, in general, what we try to do is, this is not my words, my ESA colleague literally said, the dumb, boring tasks. We don't try to take away the interesting stuff. And these are some of the use cases that we look at. So, so obviously they need to be small, because most interesting scientific stuff, we leave it to our crew. We're very much there to be in a supportive role. And of course, the housekeeping. Nobody likes doing that. So cargo arrival, being able to pack and unpack, those are stuff that none of our crewmen. And these are just some of the areas we've been working on. I'll look at it one at a time. So this is where we have our SMILE project, where we look into having home robotic assistants for assisted living, where we have different ways of commanding a home assistant robot. That's, again, our blue robot, Justin. doing an injection task. So the idea here is that you would be able to command this robot, again, with scalable autonomy. Things that require more professional help, you would have direct teleoperation to perform from a control center. Whereas, skip forward just a little bit. Right. There's the injection. We can't do real injections. That would require a medical approval. So, but the task is generally done the same way. But other things that do not require a medical professional to help you with, we can then let them use a tablet device to command at a task level. So that means that the robot can really be an assistant both to the professional and the user at home. Okay. Let's see, I'll skip this one then. All right. Oh, that's not good. Let's see. I will try to do it the old-fashioned way then. All right. Bear with me for a sec. All right. So we've also looked into using this kind of scalable autonomy to building a wheelchair robot where we can have the robot be used as a companion to somebody who's in a wheelchair, where you can handle different kinds of objects using different levels of autonomy, from shared control to a fully autonomous tasks, to if you really want to do something in direct teleoperation, you can also use this joystick device over here to command it. All right, and this is something this is from, oh my God, 12 years ago already. It still looks super exciting to me, where we have direct brain connection to command the robot. So she's a quadriplegic patient who was able to, for the first time, get herself to a bottle to drink something out of a bottle. This was super exciting back then and still is now. However, there are some drawbacks to this. This probe that's put inside the brain is that, first of all, you really have to train hard to be able to do these fairly, for us, basic motions. And also, the connections will die out in 6 months. So you can't just use this continuously. But nevertheless, it was something we were super, super excited about. All right. And then, of course, we also venture into telesurgery. Now, there's already quite a few talks that talked about telesurgery. So I will talk about this more from a different perspective. Again, you see the Sigma device over here. This is where we see how our telepresence community is really a small group, or a small world. I shouldn't say small group, a small world, in that this Sigma device was designed for us, for the medical device groups, or medical surgical group. And then just by chance, our ESA colleagues decided to use this device also for space teleoperation, which then they needed to come to us for the controls capability. So it's something that just comes full circle. And it's also really nice to see this device being used on other applications. All right. Ooh, seeing my time, I will skip over to the last one. If you're interested in talking to us about more of this stuff, of course, I'm more than happy to show you all the other stuff, but we'll close out with something a little more fun. So this is something where you use EMG to command a robot, where our colleague over here, you can see the EMG device. And that's it from me. If you have any questions for us, please come talk to us. Again, and my colleagues are also over here.
John, of course. I should leave you the microphone there, so, but it's good exercise though.
So of course, Neil, I'm going to ask about search and rescue, right? And that whole aspect of things. But a two-part question. So first, with regards to the latency, that was my focus, obviously, right? High dynamic, high density situations. And in that regard, I got to jump on Holly's bandwagon, which may be my bandwagon from World Trade Center. When disasters happen, we're not prepared. There's a need for, obviously rapid usability that you hadn't planned for. But there's also the question of which of the surviving members of the disaster ought to take over control of the robot. So I'm wondering out loud if I should probably ask Terry this, or maybe somebody from JSC, about the astronaut selection process and whether spatial abilities and affinity for robot control is part of that selection process in regards to how to respond to that. So that's first question, and whether or not any of that exists there. The second question, though, relates to a workshop that I was at across the street here 5 or 6 years ago at the Keck Institute, in which I kind of poked folks in the eye because there's a need for dynamic response even in routine exploration, right? Because of transients. So how do we know there's not a little green worm species on Mars that pops its head up right at sunrise, when you get that little bit of 0 degrees centigrade, we get at 1 degree centigrade, and all of a sudden everything's, maybe we can get up above that, and then it passes away. Or even if it's not a life form, if it's just a puff of gas or something that's released. So, it seems like autonomy might come to the rescue in that, in terms of a peripheral trade-off of, foveal acuity for a quick response as a cueing mechanism to cue the cameras. Hey, look, quick, take a peek over there, so that we don't miss that. So 2 parts. I don't know which way. I'll ask Terry about NASA, but I want to know what's going on in the commercial world, if anybody's addressing that from the commercial side.
I'll try. All right. So the first question was about astronaut selection process. We actually, in our experiments that we run so far, which we've done since 2016, 2015, I think, we don't actively choose them. Intentionally, we don't do that. So what we try to do for now is try to make our HRI as intuitive as possible. Actually, it's like what Holly's been talking about. For now, we're at the phase where we go, we don't even care who you give us. We really bend over backwards and make sure that we are like that, so that when we have mission critical systems in the future, at least we've made the lowest common denominator as low as possible. For the future, we do observe some are better at it than others. Obviously, we can't name names, but it is it is true. Some are better, some are worse. In terms of what you're talking, your second comment about being able to, let's say, smell the roses when you see them. The way we handle scalable autonomy is that we have the robot, when they're doing semi-autonomous or supervised autonomy tasks, that it will take into unexpected situations and report back, so that the user will take over. So that is something that we should be able to alert the user to be able to look at things that you did not expect. This is also important for us because we intend to be able to have one user command a team of robots. So you're not going to be able to, it's the same thing as what you're talking about, the 20 screens. You can't look at 20 screens. I can't handle 20 robots. So basically you're like the manager managing this team of robots, and one would go, I found that green puff. You want to take a look? That's right. So this is why we talk about it always in terms of it being an orbiting spacecraft. So in cislunar space, we're talking, 3 seconds time delay at the most. So that for us is still acceptable. If we're looking at something that's looking farther out, like for example, if you want to go to Mars, we'll be looking at having an orbiting spacecraft with the astronaut on board. I think I always get nervous when people say it's a solved problem. I think this is a little off topic, but I think there was one year at ICRA, probably 5 or 6 years ago, somebody said grasping is solved, and we just all freaked out. So similar goes here in that. So we're, as Thomas, my colleague, and Gunther will also say the same thing. You know, you always want to keep it stable. We're good at that. We're very good at that. I don't mean we at DLR. I meant we in this community who are working on time delay telepresence. We're good at that. I think when I started working in this area 15 years ago, we were looking at half a second time delay that we can handle stably. Now we can look at the multi-seconds. But that is not to say you have crisp force reflection that I feel when I'm touching this hard surface as a robot, my avatar, sorry, my operator will feel the same. It is a bit softer because it's a bit of a guessing game, right? So, and that's one side. So your surface contact is not going to come back that crisply. That's one thing. The other is I at least still don't know how can you get over the fact that you're going to be multi-second time behind what the robot is saying. That is something that I don't see solved yet. So there's still a lot to do. Go ahead, Joel. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. We'll let you know when we find the green worm. Just before I get on to Joel's question, in our experiments, we do intentionally put in a couple of let's say Easter eggs for our crew members to see, and this just shows some of our age. That some of the mementos we put in is too old. I put in Marvin the Martian once. Our crew didn't know what he was looking at. That was very sad for me. Anyway, now going back to what Joel was asking about. So full disclosure. So we started out with in 2017 to 2018. We just feedback, I'm able to make it or not. That's it. But then we continue forward. We started adding more and more info. So the latest work that we have is we would, for example, if we see a collision, what we would do would be a rendering of the robot. That the image gets sent back to the user, and we not only show the rendering of the robot's pose, we also show what kind of collisions they're seeing. And we also will have textual feedback on this is what I'm seeing. And please figure out a new way to do this. Whereas before, right at the beginning, it was just, sorry, I have a failure. So we are moving forward. And this is something we're bringing more and more capabilities in. For, I think, the next experiment, we are even talking about bringing an LLM to help with explaining this in a more digestible format.
Okay, thank you again, Neil, for this exciting presentation.
Thanks for not falling asleep on me.